Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm Jeff Barnett. Tonight we're going to be getting the Inside Scoop from two political warriors. The first is Bruce Shuttleworth. He's running for Congress in the 8th Congressional District. That's a district that's presently represented by Jim Moran. And there are, I think at last count, 10 Democrats competing for that nomination. The primary will be on June 10th. In the second half of the show, we're going to be talking with Cesar Del Aguila. Cesar was the chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, and many people give him extraordinary credit for the dominance of Democrats in Fairfax over the past few elections. So let's turn to my first guest, Bruce Shuttleworth. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Nice
Glad
to see you,
have
Jeff.
you here.
It's an honor to share time and space with you.
Well, thanks for the time. Now, you have a short video that really hits on some of your key subjects. So why don't we show that first and then come back and talk?
That sounds great. Thank you. Why am I running for Congress? It's simple. I want to be your progressive warrior in Congress. I will fight for social and economic justice, a sustainable economy where profit and jobs are important, clean air and water and energy security that actually makes us more secure, improved health care and a family doctor for all, national security that doesn't sacrifice our morals or lead us down a path of financial bankruptcy, and, critically, I will battle for reforming Congress, where compromising your integrity for personal gain isn't an option. Quite frankly, if Congress continues to serve the narrow, selfish interests of its members and their 1% backers over the interests of the American people, it doesn't look too good for our 200-plus year experiment in representative democracy. We just can't have congressmen who choose to represent themselves first. It's time we fight to save our country. Now is not the time to be cynical about how corrupt the system is and how nothing will change it. It isn't too late, but it certainly isn't too early. We can be the force that rights our ship and gets us back on course. I will join this battle, but I need your help. I can't do this alone. Nobody can. But I will fight hard, and we will never back down. I was raised by my parents with an ethos of service to community, to society, to nation. And great Americans of Virginia's 8th, it is time. Why am I running? It's simple. I want to be your progressive warrior for change in Congress.
Well, Bruce, you want to right the ship. I guess that's a Navy term. You're a graduate of the Naval Academy?
I am. I also was honored to represent the Naval Academy at West Point for 6 months, so I speak a little Army as well.
And then you also went to Harvard Business School. We got an MBA, right? And
I
then
did.
Boston Consulting Group and MicroStrategy.
That's correct.
And Blackboard, right?
Right, Blackboard educational software in the district.
And then Navy, you flew A6s, the Intruder?
I was an A4 Skyhawk flight instructor for a few years, which was a terrific duty, and then I served over Bosnia and Mogadishu when the Blackhawks went down, flying A6 Intruders off of USS America.
Fascinating. Well, righting the ship, and let's just talk about some of your key things. Social and economic justice. What do people need to know about your position on that?
Well, I think it's completely unsatisfactory that we have such massive income disparity in the United States. You'd expect it to be a bell curve, would you not? And to have the top 1% controlling 38% of wealth in America and the bottom 60% to have 3.8% is not the sign of a healthy economy, and something we should do so much better on.
Right. We've talked here in the past almost about an aristocracy arising in America with this kind of concentrated wealth. It's not that anybody begrudges the wealthy.
Right.
It's a concentration of wealth in a narrow bit, which historically has caused problems. And now we're at levels that we really haven't seen since really before the Great Depression, the Roaring '20 area.
I think that's exactly right.
So what are some of the things we can do about that?
Well, most assuredly, I think we should increase the minimum wage. Every study that is credible has pointed to the negative elasticity between increasing the minimum wage and decreasing poverty. Certainly we should start there. I'm not sure if $10.10 is enough, quite frankly. I think we should probably go north of there, perhaps $11, and let's learn by doing and see how we are at that point. I think that's the best start. I also think that we have, at the top end, the opportunity to have a progressive tax code that matches our progressive values. Certainly, it's not unreasonable to expect those that control such enormous wealth to give some back, to leave the ladder down for those that could still benefit from climbing up those few rungs that they need to.
And we've been there before. It's not as though this is anything really new. That's on the economic side of justice, but you put social and economic justice together. Are they really two parts of the same whole, or are there some certain things on the social justice side that's on your agenda?
Well, most assuredly, when I think of social justice, I want to make sure that we have complete equality in America. Gender equality, sexual preference equality, most assuredly racial equality. This is a constant struggle in America, and it shouldn't be. I think back from a personal experience to see just how superb women were in some unconventional pursuits. When I was a flight instructor, actually before that, one of my flight instructors was a fantastic fighter pilot and went on to fly the Space Shuttle Challenger not once, but twice. And her name was Sue. And there's absolutely nothing that women can't do in any area of the world. Certainly, we know this. From the perspective of sexual preference, it's just shocking that after the demise of the dishonest disgrace that was Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that transgendered officers and enlisted cannot serve right now. It's just absolutely unsatisfactory. I have a classmate from the Naval Academy that friended me on Facebook a couple years ago, and I didn't recognize her. She said she was a classmate of mine from the Naval Academy, and I just couldn't quite put the face to my memory, and it was bugging me. So a couple of days later, I friended her, and then, oh, I see.
And what is she doing now?
Now she's a lawyer in Ohio. Stayed with me for a few days and did a terrific talk about equality over Veterans Day. And she had one of the more funny Facebook quotes when she said, to her great credit, that she was going to be going to our 25th Naval Academy reunion. And she said, do you think people will say that I've changed?
You've got a whole raft of issues that we really should cover. We've got a few minutes before the first break, so let's get into infrastructure. You've talked about sustainable energy, food, water, transportation, housing. So let's just start off with sustainable energy.
Absolutely. So I think this is the #1 national security threat in America and the world, and we need to get on it. If our country can have the determination and grit to put man on the moon in the 1960s, there's no way that we can't chart a course to a sustainable energy future in America. The most powerful sources of energy in the world, the sun, most clearly, wind. There's plenty of power. It's free, and we can chart that course and get this done. There's a great study that came out from a Stanford professor, Mark Jacobson, for the Solutions Project, talking about how we can be 100% wind, water, and solar by 2050. Would it be hard? Absolutely. But ultimately, if you take into account all the externalities that we have with fossil fuels, to say nothing about climate instability and the threat to civilization when it comes to climate change, this is something we have to get on. I'm in the math, facts, and science department of the wing of the Democratic Party, and there's no doubt that climate change is man-made. It's a huge threat. It introduces huge risks, and we need to get on it.
Is there a first step that you would like to take?
I would like to work this in the right direction very aggressively. I want to be the most passionate voice in Congress when it comes to this. We have in Virginia the opportunity to get 60% of our energy needs from offshore wind. It's a terrific resource. 10% would probably come from onshore wind, and probably about 35% from solar power, with some residual from tidal and hydroelectric. It's incredibly doable. With the technology we have right now, what it's going to take is the political and social will to get it done.
Well, the institutions that you're going to buck up against are going to be pretty powerful.
They will be.
It's not just like the coal industry, for example, but it's also the railroad industry that works with the coal industry. It's also labor that has jobs in the railroad industry and the coal industry. I mean, there is that will be a massive disruption.
Well, let's talk jobs, Jeff. So my analysis in studying the Stanford project and some others shows that if we can embark on this sustainable energy course aggressively, we'll create 100,000 40-year jobs for the construction of this infrastructure and 80,000 40-year jobs going forward. These are the kind of jobs people want to have. These are the kind of jobs that don't harm people's lives by creating pollution and harming our planet.
You know, your concept of 40-year jobs, that's something that we don't hear much at all anymore.
No, we don't.
Jobs go obsolete very quickly, and that's why people are so uncertain about the future. So if you're talking about a 40-year job, that's something that a person, a family, can plan against. And that should be attractive on many, many levels. We have just a couple more minutes. Food. You know, that was also one of the things off your website. Why don't you talk about sustainable food?
Sure. I think there's great unknowns around the GMO foods that we have out there. I think we absolutely should label them. At this point, it's so pervasive that it's hard to eat in America without introducing yourself to this risk. There's so much we don't know. Elizabeth Kucinich has a terrific movie that she helped produce called GMO OMG that I hope a lot of people will watch. You know, people can make their own decisions about what they want to eat, and they certainly do so. But most assuredly, we should not have industry dictate, you know, what is on the label when people should have every right to know what they are eating. And I think Europe is more advanced than we are on this topic.
Yeah, how do we get there? I mean, how do we get into this situation to begin with, where industry is dictating?
I think you could follow the money on this, and certainly there is a lot of money at play when it comes to the profits that some of the larger companies have on this. Certainly it's in their best interest to try to dominate, to try to have monopoly power. The small farmer is not a big fan of this, and there's some big bullies out there. And I'm not begrudging corporate America their right to try to earn a fair profit, but most assuredly they shouldn't be putting society at risk with this. There's too many unknowns from my perspective. We need to go more slowly, we need to be more cautious with this, and we need to decide on the side of the small guy and look out for him. And that's the kind of congressman that I want to be.
You know, another one of your areas is reforming Congress, and that was on your that was on the video. We'll talk about that in the next part of the show. We're talking with Bruce Shuttleworth. He's running for U.S. Congress, a resident of Arlington, wife, 2 twin boys that he chases around. We'll be right back.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff Barnett. We're getting the Inside Scoop from Bruce Shuttleworth, who's running for the United States Congress in the 8th District. That's the district from which Jim Moran is retiring. Again, the Democratic primary will be on the 10th of June. In fact, there is a forum upcoming on April 12th at Mount Vernon High School between 4 and 6 p.m., where all of the candidates for the nomination will be there to answer questions. Shuttle, just before we broke, we were talking about Congress. Of course, the big issue there is Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. What's your take on it?
So I think ACA is a step in the right direction, but for me, make no mistake, the final destination needs to be universal health care, and I think the best way of doing that is an improved Medicare for all. If I could tell you a quick story.
So you go for a single payer?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A quick story on this is a 9/11 story. My mother, well, I'll back up a little bit. I went to work on 9/11 of 2002, not knowing what to expect, a little bit concerned, and I got a call from my father telling me that my mother was under attack and that she was diagnosed with lung cancer and probably had only 6 months to live. So she says to me, Bruce, I'm never been more healthy than I am right now. I'm going to take this vacation with your father to Sicily. And I was in that somewhat naive mode of, no, don't do that. You know, stay here and we're going to save you. We're going to do everything possible, experimental medicine, you name it. But she said, no, I'm going to go to Sicily. And so she goes there, and she's thinking she's going to have the worst day of her life because she's going to need to have a thoracentesis done there. And I hope you don't know what that is. It's where they have to insert a needle into your pleural sac to withdraw pleural fluid, which is a sign of having a diseased lung. So she goes there, and I helped her craft a one-pager, and they looked at this, and they said, oh, we can do this. And 5 minutes...
In Sicily.
In Sicily. And 5 minutes later, they didn't ask for any social security number, obviously. They didn't really even ask her name. They just looked her in the eyes and said, what ails you? How can we help you? So 5 minutes later, she's with the doctor. And 5 minutes after that, she's in a surgical room. And then they were withdrawing the pleural fluid. And 10 minutes later, they say, you're free to go. And my mom, 68 years of being conditioned by the administrative bureaucracy that is United States healthcare, kind of couldn't believe it. And she's like, well, who do I pay? I said, well, it's universal healthcare here in Sicily and in Italy. You don't have to pay anybody. She couldn't quite take that. So she goes, but you don't understand, I'm not Italian. I'm not Sicilian. They go, man, we know you're not Sicilian, and you're still free to go. We had this profound discussion about this before she died. Right. She actually preferred the treatment she got in Palermo to the treatment she had at the marble-floored grand piano in the lobby, Johns Hopkins. And when my father was diagnosed with lung cancer as well, a year after my mother died, he voted with his feet and went to a community hospital in Florida instead because he just wanted the simple blocking and tackling. Quite frankly, I think he would have preferred to go to Sicily as well, where the high morale, the lack of administration, people doing what they wanted to do. And I think that is the type of movement we need to have in America. Doctors want to help people. They don't want to have to deal with this bureaucracy. I think right now we're in this triangular treatment trap where we have fee-for-service doctors that are incented to some degree to overtreat, and that's dangerous. And then on the other end we have the insurance companies that are incented to some degree to undertreat, and that's just pathetic. And then at the top we have the hospital administrators who quite frankly are just making up robber baron-esque prices, and it's unfair. Obamacare asked a good question, that is, who pays? But the question that hasn't been asked is, why are we paying so much? And why are we getting such bad outcomes for the amount of money that we're paying? We can do so much better in America on prevention, on detection, on treatment. And someday, if we can invest the right amount of money, if we can get the right kind of intelligence, we can incent the right kind of people to start going into epidemiology and healthcare instead of perhaps Goldman Sachs, no offense to Goldman Sachs, we can have a cure. And whether that day is close in or far out is going to be up to us.
And another thing, I'm sure that hospital in Palermo was paying far less for its drugs
Absolutely.
than what we have to pay here. And if there is a problem, they're going to pay far less for the lawyers than we pay here. So between the hospital administrators, the attorneys, Big Pharma, and the insurance companies, they're taking the cream off the top, and we've almost become to accept it, and it's killing. It's not only killing people; it's killing the economy.
That's absolutely right. Corporations don't want to have to deal with this.
We're heading towards 20% of GDP for healthcare, and our economic competitors are paying 8 to 11%. The Germans, the Japanese, the English, the French, the Italians.
Well, if you look at Medicare, their overhead is about 1%. Right. If you look at the range of overhead for private medical care, it ranges from 10% on high volume practices to 30% for individuals. If you take that slice out, there's nothing we can't do. Think about the overinvestment we could then do in the National Cancer Institute that's only getting $5 billion. $5 billion. Our national defense and black budget and homeland defense gets 150 times that, but you're thousands of times more likely to die of cancer than you are from terrorism. And the United States of America is not going to be invaded. It's not. There's enough guns in Montana to deal with that. And no one wants to make sure that we have a strong enough military than myself. I owe my very life to the manpower and training and material that I had when I was flying off the pointy end of the ship, and thank you for your service. But do we need to have a military that is more than 10 times or more than the next 10 countries rolled up into one, many of which are our allies?
Let's stay on the military for a second. Let's talk about our veterans.
Absolutely.
You've made that a hallmark of your campaign. So tell us what is your agenda when you get to Congress for Veterans Affairs.
I will be the most passionate voice in Congress when it comes to veteran care. If you fought for us over there, I'll fight for you over here. If you got injured over there, you're going to get treated over here. And if there's not enough capacity in a VA center to heal you or to treat you, then you should be able to go to any hospital, anywhere, and get treated. This is very personal to me. We should just bill back at Medicare rates and get our soldiers treated. And let's make no mistake about it, mental health care is health care. And PTSD is something that if we don't get on it now, it's incredibly dangerous. It is contagious. There's a great book that was written by David Finkel called Thank You for Your Service. It's a tough but necessary read. And it talks about how we can have returning service people coming with PTSD and TBI, and they can, quite frankly, then give that to their spouse. And the spouse can get that, and then their children can get that. And this could be a generations long problem if we don't treat them properly, and we need to. We have to get on this. It's a national urgency.
Of course, one of the reasons that we don't go into wars in the first place is because these are inevitable consequences.
Inevitable.
And the best we can do is treat them and mitigate them, but eradicate it is I don't think it's on the agenda.
And I would argue that it shouldn't really be called post-traumatic stress disorder. This is a natural function of being in such a high stress, your life is on the line environment for as long as they are serving our country. And another horrible outcome here is that we have our service people coming back and they're somewhat changed sometimes. And sometimes their behavior has changed. And the military too often is giving them bad conduct discharges, which then means they can't be a beneficiary of VA care or the GI Bill. And so now what are they supposed to do? This is somebody that's not the same person as when they left. And it's because they were serving the United States of America. We can do so much better on this, and we have to.
And what you're saying is that as a guy who's worn a uniform, that you can speak the language, you can understand the problems, the issues. You can understand if the guy, if the vet is asking for too much, or if the government is giving too little. You can understand from both sides.
Right. I'm on the board of directors of Give an Hour, which is a fantastic nonprofit that's provided 100,000 therapeutic hours to our returning service people. And without charities like this, we'd be in even worse straits. The government needs to make sure that they are planning on this and that they know that probably 30% will get PTSD. And if you layer in TBI on top of that, it's incredibly damaging. And this is the month of military carers. One of my advisors is Jess Klein, who is the wife of a friend of mine who unfortunately stepped on an IED. And she had a great interview on national news just last week. And she's an Elizabeth Dole Fellow. And we need to also take into account how difficult it is to care for our returning servicemen and women. And we need to get on this. We need to treat them more fairly and make sure that they have the care that they need.
Along with veterans, lots of federal employees live in the 8th Congressional District, and you have also singled that out as an area of emphasis for you as a congressman. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So it is distressing to me to see our federal workers not be treated with the same kind of honor that, say, the military is. It's just completely unsatisfactory. These folks are on the front lines of the American way. These are the folks that answered JFK's call. And to treat them with anything other than great admiration for the great work that they're doing to protect our commons, they're absolutely critical to the American way. And to cut off our nose to spite our face and to try to balance the budget on the backs of our federal workers, no, not on my watch. And Jim Rand has done a fantastic job at supporting our federal workers over the years, and he gets a lot of credit for that.
That's marvelous. Well, we've got just a couple of more minutes. I'll tell you what, why don't I just turn that over to you? Why don't you go ahead and talk with people and just give them a minute as to why they should be voting for you for the Congress in the Democratic primary on June 10th.
Oh, thank you. I was endorsed by Dennis Kucinich, and I was very delighted to have been done so. I think he saw in me the leadership and trust and character that is so important to our United States Congress. To me, I think the United States Congress is the most important institution in the world, the most important arm of the most important country, and to have it at a 10% approval rating right now is richly earned, and it needs to be fought so that we get it back to where it needs to be. And we need to make sure that we're electing congressmen and congresswomen of the highest integrity and the highest trust that will do things that are right because they're right, even if it hurts them in the process. I will be that congressman. I'm committed to that. I've always chosen the harder right, and I'll continue to do so. I will not be beholden to the big money interests. I'll do what's right for the American people, so help me God.
Well, Bruce, thank you very much. Shuttle, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Jeff.
Again, the Democratic primary is on the 10th of June, and there is a forum on the 12th of April. It'll be at Mount Vernon High School. All, I guess, 10 candidates will be there. And Bruce, it's just been a joy talking with you, and the best of luck in your campaign, and thank you for standing up.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate the interview.
Best of luck.